Hi everyone, Jenna McPhee here. I am talking with Peter Ashley again today, and he's going to be talking about the 84th Regiment and the Emigrant Ship, the Glasgow.
When the revolution was just breaking out in what is now the United States, was then the 13 colonies of Britain, they figure the last immigrant ship to leave Scotland was the Glasgow, and it had over 200 Scottish immigrants on board. I'd like to read this. This is from research conducted by Alistair Grant, who is one of the descendants of the 84th. And it says, the Glasgow is believed to have been the last ship of immigrants to leave Scotland before the outbreak of full hostilities in the American Revolutionary War. No passenger list appears to have been made of those who were on it, something that was quite typical of the time. What little is known of its departure is based on a report by customs officers at Fort William in Scotland on the 3rd of September 1775. And it states, a Clyde vessel, Clyde being an area in Scotland, was expected here to ship off immigrants for North America. They shipped here on board for New York 65 men above 20 years of age, 17 youths from 10 to 20, 40 boys under 10 years, being 122 males, 70 women above 20 years, 24 girls from 10 to 20 years, and 35 female children under 10 years of age, being 129 females. In all, 251 souls. These people were mostly all from the northern parts of the Shire of Strathglass on the land of Chisholm country. None of them had the appearance of gentlemen, and gentlemen being what they perceived to be upper class, people with a little wealth. But a Mr. Fraser and a Mr. Chisholm, they were the only ones deemed to be gentlemen. The rest seemed to be very poor people, at least they had that appearance. They, however, all made shift to pay, as we are told, for their passage, but about 20 of them that were indented with the owners of the vessel and Mr. Fraser and Chisholm, who freighted the vessel for them. They would give us no proper cause for leaving their country, but the racked rents, meaning the high rents on the property, exacted by the proprietors of lands, that they're subject to carry them, and though they were repeated times told of the rebellion in some of the colonies in North America, they did not seem to be moved by that, saying they were assured that New York and parts they were bound to were not in rebellion, and that they did not think themselves in any danger of being forced to serve either His Majesty's troops or the provincials. That optimism proved to be unfounded. The colonies were very rapidly falling into rebellion. New York was one of the last strongholds of the British, and because of the risk that some of these Scottish immigrants might actually land and then be forced into service by the provincials, the British passed a resolution that all immigrant ships should be boarded, and that these Highland immigrants should all be pressed into service with the British Army before there was any chance of them being recruited by the rebels. What happened next is well described by James Fraser, one of the passengers, in subsequent petition for land, and he's the one that they presume to have been one of the gentlemen. That your memorialist in the year 1775 came and arrived at the harbor of New York from North Britain. Upon their arrival there, the revolution breaking out, memorialists were impressed and taken as captives by His Majesty's ship of war, the HMS Asia, which was a 64-gun warship, so not to be argued with, that's for sure. then being in that harbor, till such time as they would voluntarily engage themselves in one body or otherwise be distributed into other corps. Wherefore, memorialists agreed to remain and abide in one body as aforesaid in His Majesty's 2nd Battalion, 84th Regiment. So basically, they were boarded and all told to go to Boston, and then from there they were to head to Nova Scotia. And they did all agree to one thing, and that is that they would stay together and that they would be serve in the Highland Regiment as opposed to one of the other British regiments. This is a letter actually from Captain Murdoch McLean, who was one of the officers in the 84th Regiment, and his account of it is a little bit more rosy than what James or Mr. Fraser's was. He says, "We, the following subscribers, now passengers on board the Glasgow, Captain Portersfield, commander, being fully determined to serve in the Regiment of Royal Highland Emigrants under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Alan McLean, do hereby agree immediately after our landing in America to enter into the said regiment, therein to serve in whatever station the said Lieutenant Colonel McLean or other officers under his command will appoint us to, and that upon the terms of conditions mentioned in the letter," which I had discussed before, the terms of conditions, from the said Lieutenant Colonel McLean to Captain Murdoch McLean, dated at Boston the 14th day of June in 1775, was communicated to us, and wherewith we hold ourselves well contained, and further, whereas there is clothing, etc., to a considerable value destined for the use of said regiment, it is probable that our landing would be opposed by the rebel Americans, and therefore, basically, he says, we all joyfully joined the Royal Highland Emigrants, which was a lot rosier than what Mr. Fraser had said. On board that ship, I'm certainly not going to read all the names of the men who were on board, but your relatives,
McPhees.
the McPhees were among them, and two of them, Ewan, or Evan as he became known, and James McPhee. And they were immediately put in the 5th Company, which at that time was going to be stationed in Newfoundland. So Newfoundland in winter would have been a fun place to be. So when these immigrants were all brought finally to Nova Scotia, it was in the winter, and all of those women, all of those wives, children, they were all supposed to be put up in barracks in Halifax. Problem was there wasn't enough barrack space. So they did suffer that first winter of 1776, 1777. And that was the story of the Glasgow packet and the Scottish immigrants who landed.